All right, the Battle of Ohio is here, and that means it's a special time here. It's we're doing a special collab, I guess. The kids call that. We're not kids. Zach and I are old, but we're gonna call it that to try to sound young. The Growler and Zac Jackson and Friends podcast collaboration, talking Battle of Ohio, talking Bengals-Browns. How is life in Cleveland, Zach?
You look good for your age, Paul, I got to say.
Thanks. I'm just jealous you have hair. I gave up long ago on that. You're still hanging in there.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's strange vibe here, as always. That goes for like 3 decades, but there is some excitement about this game. I would tell you that I don't feel a ton of normal opening day excitement. Maybe that'll change, right, over the next few days, but I always love watching these teams. I've been watching Joe Burrow for a long time. I covered the Xavier UC brawl in 2011, so that gives me like a lifetime citizenship to Cincinnati, right? Even
No
though
doubt.
I only stay there 3 nights a year. So I enjoy this. I remember going to New Philadelphia in whatever year it was to watch Joe Burrow. In the first half, he kind of sucked, and I thought, I can't believe we fell for this. In the second half, I was like, I think I'm going to follow this guy's career. So I'm going to see him on Sunday.
Yes. And here we are.
Yeah.
Where the only thing is a Super Bowl ring and an MVP that's not really on his mantle yet. And who knows, maybe this will be the year they do it because they've got their stars back. I want to start, if we can, with the offseason. And because it was fascinating on both ends. From a Cleveland perspective, where are they better? Like where is it better? Where do you feel like they have attacked things?
Well, the answer to that is that in so many areas it couldn't be worse, that they're just better. And we'll start to see on Sunday, right, Paul? But they couldn't run the ball, they couldn't make kicks. Denzel Ward dropped 7 interceptions, right? Like, they had the most pre-snap penalties in the league. They had 4 quarterbacks. Like, it just was so bad. They're playing Bailey Zappi and Dorian Thompson-Robinson because Jameis could not quit throwing it to the other team. So they're better.
Yeah.
Right. As far as the offseason, there's always 100 things with the Browns, but there were 2 main things. Appease Myles Garrett, who told the truth about the organization and demanded a trade. They did that with money. And then dive back into this quarterback search, which, how are you going to do it? They have limited resources. They still are committed to Watson for way down the road. So they got Kenny Pickett for really the price of nothing. They got Joe Flacco for really the price of nothing. They decided on Dylan Gabriel, which they think is right and the rest of the world thinks is wrong. And then somebody in the organization decided they should also draft Shedeur Sanders. So that made this unprecedented summer and spring quarterback situation to where Pickett got hurt and never really was a part of it. I think Flacco was going to win anyway. I think just, his experience, poise, his voice, he's the only guy that has been in this building before. So he's going to play. The craziest stat of this weekend that's not really a stat is that Joe Flacco started against the Cincinnati Bengals on September 7th, 2008, his first NFL game. And now, 17 years later, here he goes. So what's going to happen, Paul, is he's going to play until he can't. And that, obviously, you don't root for injury or ineffectiveness, but at some point this team's going to be out of contention and they're going to play the kids. And I think Joe can still play to an extent. I don't think he's 2012 Joe. I think this defense has a chance to be really good. And so here we are. That's the offseason, and here we are headed to Sunday.
The Bengals offseason somehow created more storylines than the Browns, which rarely happens.
Yeah.
Normally you have one of those where we're always spending that time of year talking about Cleveland's issues, but the Bengals issues were so front porch in the NFL this year. It was crazy. But we stand here today, all the things that back at the combine and the Super Bowl and the Pro Bowl that Joe Burrow laid out, every box that Joe Burrow demanded, essentially, that the organization check, they checked. Mm-hmm. They gave him who he wanted. He even asked for Mike Gesicki, and they brought Mike Gesicki back. He's got Jamar Chase back. He's got T. Higgins signed. Trey Hendrickson is here and as happy as Trey Hendrickson gets after getting an extra $13 million to this year's salary and potential for free agency next year. They do have Gesicki. His offensive coordinator is back for a second year, and Dan Pitcher, who's kind of a rising star in this league. And they feel like they built something special offensively last year and are just living the continuity life on that right now, expanding. They found a guy in Chase Brown, and they're featuring him more. They feel really, really good about everything they did offensively this offseason.
Yeah.
But as we know, that doesn't really matter if the defense doesn't get better, and they have Al Golden and a shrug. Is how they fixed it. They decided new coordinator, new ideas, a history of developing young players. Here's all our young players that Lou Anarumo said weren't very good. And that's kind of been their strategy for the defense being better this year. We'll see if it works out. We'll see who was the proper scapegoat. Was it the personnel department or was it Lou Anarumo? If Al can get more out of the young players, the Bengals defense could be better and be very good. But I'm curious to see. That's going to be the thing. You get this very interesting matchup of the two questionable units,
right?
Of Joe Flacco and the Browns offense versus what is this Bengals defense? Is it who sucks less? Is somebody actually good? I'm fascinated to see that play out, specifically where you would think the other side would be the more intriguing matchup.
I agree. Like, September is completely unpredictable in the NFL, and that's because nobody's a finished product, right? And crazy things happen. But in this game, you have strength on strength. You have potentially the best offense in the league against a defense that's going to be somewhere between pretty good and elite. And then you have a really bad defense, we think, against a really bad offense, we think. The Browns, they have one part of their identity is their defense, their defensive line. Jim Schwartz plays one way. They attack upfield. They have the best defensive player in the game in Myles Garrett. They have a top 5 corner in Denzel Ward. They have some new guys. JOK, who's been a huge part of this defense, might never play again. He's certainly out for this year. They drafted Carson Schlesinger, this second-round middle linebacker, and if the Browns are decent, he's a defensive rookie of the year candidate. That's how impressive he's been thus far. So we'll see. Like I said, they didn't make their kicks. They threw it to the other team. They were the lowest scoring team in the league. Last year's Browns, Paul, had a worse point differential than the 17 team that went winless. So that's what
that's
I mean.
Unbelievable.
Right. They only had 8 rushing touchdowns all year. So they draft a running back in the second round, and he's not on the roster right now. He's still unsigned. So it's like this 20-some years of shit show into certainly 14 months, 3 years of shit show since the Watson trade. And here they are. It's a talented team. And in a lot of spots, it's not a deep team. It's a really top-heavy team. So I think the Browns in 2025, and you tell me if this makes any sense. I think they're going to be a bitch to play against. I'm just not sure how many they're going to win. And if I had to guess, I would say not many at all.
Someone asked me yesterday about what I think of what this game will look like. I said, it'll look like every Bengals-Browns game. The Browns are going to muck it up, and the Bengals are going to have trouble with that offensively. Like they've always had, even in games where they have them out-talented by a mile in December, the Browns find ways to make it look sloppy for the Bengals, and maybe Burrow and Chase make a couple extra plays and they're just in a better place. But like, it's never been clean. They've never been able to just have their way like they do with so many other teams around this league. Like, it's just not going to look like that. And so I think inevitably it probably does come back to the two other sides of the ball. And if Flacco's going to throw it to these guys, they're going to rely, like they are so, Al Golden has focused so much on, and I think the early part of the season for the Bengals is going to be defined by, can they get turnovers to offset the growing pains, the talent that needs to develop, them figuring out who's going to be part of this and who's not. Like, they need to make a few plays, play from ahead, get Flacco having to throw the ball, and then hope that their opportunistic defense can do some of that. Because they're not going to go out there and stop people all day. They were super concerning in the preseason in that they were just getting moved at the point of attack. They looked out of place. Apparently, they didn't want to show anything.
Yeah.
So they didn't show anything. Everything's being hidden, including the ability to hold a block. So they're like, don't show that, apparently. But it was very concerning for people at Cincinnati seeing them get moved everywhere when they had the first teamers out there for 5 drives, offense and defense, each in the preseason, and it looked terrible. It was deja vu. It was like watching the 24 Bengals all over again. It was awful defense, great offense. And so I'm curious to see, that feels like that'll be a bigger part of this game, is going to be something that Flacco has done in the older part of his career, which is throw the ball to the other team. can they make those plays? Can they take advantage of it? Because I see a sloppy, mucky game on the other side because it always looks like that.
Yeah, well, it's like the Bengals are fine winning 31-30. The Browns would prefer to win 17-14, right? And I don't think Stefanski would ever say this, but I think he says, look, if Flacco throws 2 touchdowns, we live with the 2 interceptions, we turn it over to our defense, and we give ourselves a chance to win. Like that's every single week, right? Will it work all the time? No. But is that how they plan on trying to win here? Sure. So the Browns have a long list of issues, Paul, but I think one of them that's come to the forefront, and this is preseason is a liar, but they lost cornerback Martin Emerson early in camp. He's out for the year. And that makes Greg Newsome a full-time starter outside, and that puts Cameron Mitchell in the slot. And, Newsome's in a contract year. He missed some time in camp because he had a minor injury. They just needed to be careful after they lost Emerson, right? But, man, Cameron Mitchell seemed to really struggle. And the guy behind him to play the slot is Miles Harden, who's a 7th-rounder last year. He's tiny. So I just think I think Miles will do what Miles does to Burrow to an extent. But I think eventually they'll move these receivers around. And it may not be a Jamar Chase game because of Denzel Ward. Obviously, nobody shuts out Chase, right? But I just think they're really going to go at these other corners, and I think eventually they'll score enough that the Browns can't keep up.
What the Bengals have loved about the evolution of their offense is how much it's been able to be diversified from week to week. And the way that, last year, the main story that everyone saw because he won the Triple Crown was how much they moved Jamar around more. I mean, it was everywhere. You couldn't place him. You couldn't. Right. And Pitch said, we spent this offseason planning the counters to that of other ways to pinpoint the defense into binds and to make them have to face matchups that they don't want to face by where they move Chase, where they move Mike Gesicki, who they really unlocked the second half of last year and figuring out the way to use him. That's why they wanted him back. The way they're using Chase Brown in the passing game so much more. He became a real weapon as a receiver. They've got him lined up outside now and running real receiver routes down the sideline when people just throw a linebacker up there against him. He's beating Logan Wilson and safeties in practice. And so they feel like they can find those matchups pre-snap, and Joe's the best in the world at processing that and picking it out and getting it out quickly to those guys. So sure. I look for Burrow. The other side of this, though, is Burrow has been absolute dog crap in openers. Like, it has usually been because of a bad August, be due to injury or appendectomy or sure. ACL recovery, or is my wrist broken for life? Like, that's been the case. But this was the first real August. He's been wanting to play in the preseason since his second year, since he had 5 turnovers against Pittsburgh in 2022. And this is the first year he's actually really been able to do it. And he was running around on Monday Night Football with Joe Buck yelling at him to get down because he wanted to. He wanted to get out there and feel it, feel the urgency, feel the pocket, and play that way. I like his ability to not have another one of these bad Joe's got rust openers that has been a hallmark of his early seasons in his career. Better this year, but I wonder how much of that is still going to be there. How much did the preseason and the full camp help him shake that off in the continuity, or is that still kind of going to be a part of what we see here? So that'll be another interesting part as Joe tries to, put the puzzle together. But their continuity is certainly going to help them to kind of pick up a little bit where they left off at the end of last year.
What is it, 1-9 in the first 2 weeks the last 5 years? Is that what they are?
Yes. Zach Taylor in his tenure has 1 win in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah,
since 2019.
Wow, that's bad.
Staggering.
Question asking for a friend who happens to be on this podcast with you right now. Who's the sleeper on this loaded offense fantasy wise? Is it Brooks? Is it Gesicki? Is it Charlie Jones? Like who's the guy that nobody knows about?
Yoshi. I would say Andre Yosevach. They love. I mean, they view him as. I mean, him and Gesicki are wide receiver 3, depending on the week.
Right. Yoshi's a big dude. I remember seeing him last year. Like he's like tight end size. Yeah.
So they recognized his role is in a big slot role. He'd never played the slot before last year, really, in his life almost. Okay. And he was out there the first day of training camp beating Mike Hilton, which was kind of an indictment on where Mike Hilton currently is, but also on Yoshi being able to pick something up quickly. I mean, Ivy League, right? He's going to Ivy League education guy, but he did pick it up quickly. And they recognized him being able to dig out safeties, crack back against receivers, and get occasionally, be a part of the run game. is a really an impactful role for them. And so he got bigger, he got stronger, he got better at doing that stuff. He understands if he wants to be on the field occasionally, having Joe Burrow look his way with all those other weapons on the field, he's going to have to do that great. And he has. And so they really like him. I think they would prefer him over tight end Mike Gesicki doing any of that stuff at this point. I think they like Gesicki better as a receiver probably, which is kind of, part of Yoshi. But if you're looking from fantasy, I mean, he's been a red zone guy for them. I mean, he has a super high percentage of his total receptions have been touchdowns. Joe loves him down there in the red zone. And so you get him when teams feel like they're in double mode on T and Jamar. In down there, we've seen a lot of Andre Yosemash.
Yeah, I remember, I forget which stadium it was last year, but I came around the corner and he just happened to be right there, like 2 hours before the game. And I was like, holy shit, I've never seen this dude in person. Like, this is way more a tight end than a wide receiver.
Yeah. And they've kind of turned him and Gesicki both into these hybrid players for them.
The Browns have Cedric Tillman and Gage Larvin in their receiving core.
Tell me this. Who is going to blow up whoever's playing right guard? Looks like Lucas Patrick right now for the Bengals at right guard. They have a rookie at left guard and Dylan Fairchild, a 3rd-round pick. Mason Graham, I assume, is going to be a part of that situation. How's he looked, and who is going to be the ones attacking that weakness in the Bengals offensive line?
Yeah, in the base defense, it's going to be Mason Graham, the 1st-round rookie. He's going to be the left defensive tackle, so he'll be across the right guard. In the different packages, especially as the Bengals stay spread most of the game, you'll see different guys. And on certain passing situations, you'll see one of the defensive ends move inside, and occasionally it'll be Myles Garrett. But in the base defense, Myles plays right end and Mason plays left defensive tackle, and that's to discourage double teams from Myles because they think Mason is good enough. They went and got Malik Collins. They gave him $10 million guaranteed after San Fran moved on from him. He's a pass rusher too. Graham's off to a really good start. Schwesinger's off to a really good start. Harold Fannon's off to a really good start. They have to carry it over into games, right? But I think we've seen the talent. And it was like, no duh, when you draft a guy at 33 and you draft a guy at 5, they're immediate starters. And that's what Graham and Schwesinger are. So Graham obviously playing defensive tackle for a bad Michigan team was way under the radar. But he, for 3 years, was one of the best players in college football. And it's a little different here, not just the transition to the NFL, but what he's been asked to do. But he's going to be a really good player for a long time, Paul, and I won't be surprised if he makes impactful plays on Sunday. So that's the whole thing. Burrow knows he's going to have to get rid of it quickly a lot. Can they speed him and pitch up, right? And can they force a couple of turnovers? Like, that's the whole thing. For the Browns to beat anybody, but especially to keep up with this offense, it's got to be multiple turnovers, and they got to cash them in at least to an extent.
And they have a history of doing it. And that's been kind of the thing about this between, rush and cover ability. It's that they have had a little bit of the kryptonite to the Bengals strategy. And we'll see. That's where the Emerson thing, I think, really shows up because they've had the answer at both spots. Most teams don't.
Right.
And so when it now what happens with T or when they go to the other guys, I think that certainly definitely caught my eye when that popped up in training camp. Well, what do you got? Do you have a prediction for Sunday? Yeah,
I am going to pick the Browns to cover, but the Bengals to win in a typical Cleveland opening day heartbreak fashion. So like I said, I expect a sharp effort. I expect Stefanski's best script. I expect Joe Flacco's most comfortable environment to the point that you can control it. I think both tight ends will be involved, and I think they're going to take some shots, not only to Jerry Jeudy, but the new guy, Isaiah Bond, who they just brought in a couple of weeks ago. So I think the Browns will score. I think both teams will score. I like Burrow in the 4th quarter. So like a 27-24-ish, or maybe something more heartbreaking, like 26-23, totally odd game. Something crazy is going to happen in the 1st quarter, Paul, and 2 more crazy things are going to happen in the 2nd quarter. But I would expect the Bengals to win the game, but certainly have to earn it. So that's what I'm rolling with. When do our predictions come out in paper? Friday morning?
Friday morning, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick somewhere in that high 20s to mid 20s range in a close and wild game that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, I think so. I don't see the Bengals offense posting a 30. Like they could. I just knowing the history here and how well the Browns have always been able to sort of slow things down and some of the week 1 stuff. So I'm with you. I think it's sloppy. I think there's probably a turnover that the Bengals will be pointing to why they won this game. But I think, another thing that we haven't talked about that's going to make Bengals fans nervous is I think you're going to have an Evan McPherson field goal that's going to hold a lot of weight. He missed a bunch of those last year that cost them multiple games that would have had them in the playoffs and this scary team to play there. And he's corrected his technique going back to his rookie year stuff when he couldn't miss and was this unbelievable kicker. And has looked a lot better, but it was always going to be about, but what does it look like when it's the fourth quarter again and it's from 52? Are you going to be able to do it? I feel like that's going to be another one that's going to play a huge role in this game, and we'll see if Evan comes through. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the similar range, but I don't think the Bengals offense is going to go spray directly back up in the 30 range. I think a low 20s with some weird, just feels just right.
Yeah.
Right for Bengals-Browns.
People up here know about the kicking situation. They extended Dustin Hopkins a year ago and they cut him a week ago because they just can't trust him. So certainly that is very interesting to watch, and people will, hold their breath on that situation. So like I said, I look, you mentioned the Bengals being so dangerous. This is the only team of the Browns' first 6 weeks that didn't make the playoffs last year. And anybody with a brain knows that they make the playoffs, they're dangerous. So this game means everything to the Browns. It's just one of 17, but they're in Baltimore next week for a true homecoming game, right? It's like they're Eastern Michigan coming in. It's when you bring out the parades and the donors and ask them for everything, right? If the Ravens are celebrating their 30th anniversary. The Ravens, the former Browns, are celebrating their 30th anniversary next Sunday with Joe Flacco, quarterback from the other team, the winningest
so gross
in franchise history. Joe Flacco, by the way, Paul, is the third winningest quarterback in the history of Brown Stadium.
Oh my God.
What an incredible you can't make this shit up. You can't.
No, you can't.
You can't. So the Browns, this game is everything for the Browns, because then it goes Packers and Lions the rest of September. Then they go to London. They come back from London. They go to Pittsburgh, where they haven't won in the regular season in 22 years. Like, they got to get this one. And I do think you're going to see the best shot. So we're a few days from finding out if the best shot is good enough. And if Miles and Denzel can really be that good from how they looked and how they've talked and what Miles has to feel like he owes this organization, I think you'll see it. So what's the counterpunch that Joe and Pitch have? We're going to find out.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I look forward to being up there and seeing you down the stadium. It won't be long. I won't have to go to that stadium anymore, though, right?
But that's 4 more seasons.
4 more seasons. That's another podcast for another day. We'll talk about that another time.
Every day here, there's a story that has nothing to do with the Browns winning games. They're building a city around the facility. They're building a stadium. They're suing the city. The city's suing them. They're doing a collaboration with this person. It's all of this. There's this player suspended. There's a player arrested. There's a player whose charges were dropped and now they signed him. Like, every single day, Paul. Why do I look so old? Because I've been covering this team for 25 miserable years.
I knew we'd eventually get there. It took 23 minutes, but I knew we'd eventually get there to that point where you start breaking down. It's a cry for help.
It's September, buddy. We're fresh. I look forward to seeing you.
Look forward to it too. It's going to be a great time. Yeah. I will try to get myself back together after my Saturday night in Cleveland, and by the time you see me on Sunday.
Enjoy it.
All right. Have a good one.